When I first went to a Vietnamese school, I walked around the school during lesson time and it was completely quiet. And then the gong went, yeah? I never heard that before, but... Okay, sorry, apologies. This gong went off and it was literally like an earthquake because the Vietnamese playground is just the noisiest playground I've ever heard in my life, right? I think the big thing that's going to happen now is adaptability. Adaptability? Yeah, because the world is going to transform in a way that we do not understand. Okay, AI is in its infancy, and I would say the majority of people I've met in my life have very to little to no understanding of AI. Okay, and this, for a young person, is a significant advantage because young people, when they grow up, are more familiar with apps and using internet and stuff like that than the older generation. And therefore, their ability to utilize AI and other computer tools successfully cannot be underestimated, one. But two, this idea of adaptability, you know, the idea, I want to be a lawyer and that's my job for the rest of my life. Well, yeah, maybe, but you don't know what's going to happen with the law profession in 25 years or even 5 years. So I think that having the mindset of creating lots of skills that you're good at, but also having the mindset to say, you know what, if I have to change career paths and be flexible with my future, I'm willing to do that. I think that's going to be a key thing going forward.
Interesting. I like adaptability. I think that's very important and something I would say Vietnamese student would like. Would you say the same thing?
Well, I think that, it's tricky because, there's 80 million people in Vietnam. I don't know how many kids there are, but everyone's slightly different. And at Ashbourne, we've had over 250 Vietnamese students and not everyone's the same. No. That's true, okay? But you're quite right. There are some kind of things in traditional schooling in Vietnam maybe drilled kids in a certain way where they were less likely to be adaptable, less likely to be independent. That's true. And therefore, maybe that's something to think about going forward. But having said that, I think that it's, in my experience of dealing with teenagers growing up, a Vietnamese child is more likely to have gone to school by themselves earlier than an English child. That would have happened back in the day, right? And they would have done a lot. They might have ridden on a motorbike with their parents, right, at a very young age. Yes, where, as a UK parent, that would never happen. So there's kind of like, with that kind of sort of exposure, maybe they're not outwardly independent and adaptable, but maybe inwardly they don't realize, in fact, they've got a lot more experience in life than they maybe believe they do. They also, when I first went to a Vietnamese school, I walked around the school during lesson time and it was completely quiet. And then the gong went, yeah? I never heard that before, but... Okay, sorry, apologies. This gong went off and it was literally like an earthquake because the Vietnamese playground is just the noisiest playground I've ever heard in my life, right? So I think also then, because of that, you've got this idea of Vietnamese maybe coming to England, maybe they're a bit shy. That's true, but also, they're also part of a group, in my opinion, are the noisiest children in the world. That's a positive, but I know that's not a negative, right? So they do have the ability to communicate and do have the ability to speak up. So I just think it's about trying to recognize who you actually are and factually just look inside yourself. You probably are a lot more confident and adaptable than maybe you think you are. That's my gut feeling. But obviously, you're not all the same. Everyone's different.
In your experience dealing with so many young adults, I'm sure you have met many cases where a student say, I want to do, like you said, engineering, yeah, but then ended up pursuing a career in finance later on in their life. What would be the key qualities or key skill sets, you would say, a student would try to get from the degree course, whatever it is, to ensure that whatever equip them at that point can be transferable to the next job that they might pursue?
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe skill is one thing to think about. but I think network is probably better. I think if you think about your own lives, or our own lives now, if we were to get into trouble, or if we needed an idea, or we needed some support, who's your network? If your network's weak, you got a problem. University, you're going to a place of maybe 20,000 students. That's a great opportunity to network with some really interesting people. So you talk about the value of going to a top-ranking university. Yes, of course, you've got the branding. Yes, of course, you've got the quality of the course. But most importantly, in my opinion, you're going to a place where other students that are capable, that are interested, I'm not saying all of them, but there's a general mix, and they've probably themselves got very good networks. So if you can actually infiltrate those and be a part of it, join different clubs and activities and societies, and you probably will find that through that, you'll gain as much than from your degree. Of course, with the degree, there's many things that you can look to gain from it. And if there's one thing I would tell any students to do is just make sure you read. I know it sounds a weird thing, but make sure you use your university years to spend a significant amount of time reading and researching, because I think that ultimately it's through that kind of independent research that you really start to kind of anchor your learning and understanding of things. But from a networking point of view, that's where I think your time should be spent at university.